Since I was a young lad, I dreamed that maybe someday I'd be able to lock my family in a room and watch them starve to death. But there was one problem: I couldn't do it on the go. Now, thanks to Nintendo's handy-dandy new system, the Nintendo Switch, I have the freedom to fulfill my dreams on the road. But that's not all. I think there's plenty of other experiences that would be great on the Nintendo Switch, which is basically just a fancy way of saying I want to play these games handheld. These are my top 10 picks for games that should come to the Switch. Now, before I get started, I want to clear the air. I know I'm going to get screamed at in the comments if I don't mention this, but I'm not, nor do I support being that guy who harasses every game dev on Twitter about Switch ports. Imagine putting all your blood, sweat, and tears into a game just for some goblin to message you saying, So, let's just be peaceful dreamers here together and imagine what could be. A couple of rules before I get started here. I'm only going to be talking about games that have already been released on another system, which means I can't go daydreaming and just say I want Half-Life 4, Scholar of the First, Phantom Pain, or some other made-up game, I don't know. Secondly, I want to focus on things that weren't made by Nintendo, so let's give the third-party boys some love and get started. In an age where IGN's top 50 games are competing to see who can jam in the most shades of gray and brown, it seems that video games have lost a lot of their style and instead went full realism. This sort of phenomenon came to a peak sometime in the mid-Xbox 360 era, where every video game aisle looked like it was trying its hardest to show as few colors as a scene from Mad Max. Now, my wording here may sound pretty negative, but I don't always see this as a bad thing. I can dig my fair share of the Battlefront 1s and PlayerUnknown's Battletoads, you know, the good stuff. But sometimes you want to be lovingly lifted up and spiked back into your childhood, back into the days of Sly Cooper, Crash Bandicoot, and that one crocodile who hasn't been talked about in 8 years. And what better way to get a glimpse of that than with A Hat in Time? Now, yeah, this is just dreaming because the devs have shot down any questions regarding A Hat in Time coming to the Switch, but this is my heaven. I get to make things how I wish here. I recently went through my first playthrough of A Hat in Time, and that game is just oozing Nintendo 64 inspirations out of every mechanic. The way that the levels are diced up into particular objectives would make for a great format on the go. Crack out your Switch during the morning bus ride and enjoy that smooth pick up and play style. You know, if I were stuck on that bus from the movie Speed, I know for a fact I'd feel a hell of a lot better with A Hat in Time's smooth OST calming my nerves. If that doesn't sell you on it, I don't know what will. While we're on the topic of nostalgia pandering, that's a thing. It's pretty common nowadays for companies to re-release their games as remasters, especially the real old ones, which I think is a totally great thing. Not everybody who wants to replay Crash Bandicoot wants to dig through their neighbor's garbage bins until they inevitably find a PlayStation 1 in there. But I mean, once you find one, you'll need to get your hands on a CRT and cross your fingers that the console hasn't decided to off itself recently. Unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of retro games, so I think this new wave of accessibility can be really great. But in this specific case, the collection I want to see come to the Nintendo Switch is the Mega Man the Mega Man X God damn it. I mean the Mega Man Zero collection, because that's the only one that hasn't been announced yet. I really am glad to hear that X has already come into consoles, because the only Mega Man games to receive any attention in this last decade is just classic Mega Man. And I may be in the minority on this, I don't know, but X and Zero have way more interesting combat and deserve to see the light of day. But Capcom's level and interest can be ranked as follows: Classic, then every Mega Man show, then Dirt, then that fat Mega Man in Street Fighter, then X, then Dirt again, and lastly Zero. It really is unlikely that we'd see these games revived anytime soon, but don't worry Zero, we'll be setting you a spot at the table every night until you come home. You know, I'm actually not sure if this next one's a possibility. I mean, Nintendo is so anti-violence on their systems that I just don't see it. Nah, you know what, never mind. I don't have a whole lot to preface this game other than it's easily my favorite indie game of all time. I will purchase it on literally every single thing until I control a majority share in the company. I'd play this on my goddamn Google Home if they let me. Do not test me. With fantastic indie game and violence in mind, you already know what this one's gonna be, don't you? I had a great time playing Hotline Miami back on the PS very forgotten dead console, and I'd love to see the chance to bring it around with me once more. If we could get both Hotline Miami 1 and 2 bundled together in a neat little package, this would be a real good time on the go. Hotline Miami's quick, intense levels make for that perfect pick-up and play format I've been talking about, and I really need to be able to blast hydrogen during family gatherings. You know, sometimes I think the best way to kick a depressive episode is to throw your life away entirely and restart with a new one. Some of the best games contain a level of immersion, something that you can invest yourself into and forget about your real worldly problems. You know, some people get sucked into JRPGs, some people prefer other games like Skyrim and Fallout, or you could even be one of those creatures that play Second Life. But personally, I think one of the best options is The Sims. You can recreate your own sad life and make it just a little bit better by giving yourself a real job, you lazy trash. I think the real reason why The Sims would be a good fit for the Switch is because it's never truly seen a solid handheld version unlike anything ever. The Sims on mobile feels like a bad Facebook game, and the few entries we've seen on DS were like, really weird. The Sims console ports in the past haven't been too hot. In fact, I'd say they were downright cold. But I think the ability to carry the game with me on the go would be just the incentive I need to stomach a bad port. There's some concepts for games that make absolutely no sense, but when you play them, you're like, oh wow, that was actually kind of fun. Things like Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley fall well within that category. Who could have possibly told you that performing chores on the farm was fun? I mean, someone other than your weird uncle. But video games have proven to us time and time again that even the most mundane of tasks can be made exciting through the powers of exaggeration. And what better example of this phenomenon than the Ace Attorney series? I actually recently started playing through the series myself once it was ported to mobile phones, but every time I fire it up, I think to myself, man, playing games on phones really sucks ass. So my reasoning for this title is actually a little backwards because I could very well play most of the games on a handheld through both the 3DS and, like I said, the mobile phone. But I'd love the chance to play this on a full-size TV. Imagine dealing the final blow in a really tough case. The song starts playing, you know the one, and you just spike your Joy-Cons through the coffee table as the jury erupts. I couldn't possibly imagine a more spectacular moment. You could ask anyone on the street if couch multiplayer was still alive, and they'd push you over and take your wallet. But more importantly, as they were strutting away, you would be informed that the genre is dying. There's still some really solid games on PC that sport fun, local competitive multiplayer experiences, things like Gang Beasts, Duck Game, and Human Fall Flat. The issue that I constantly run into with these is that getting everyone set up on the PC with their own controllers can be exhausting. First, you need like 4 Xbox controllers, and if they don't have Bluetooth, you either need adapters or enough USB cables on the floor that if somebody dare moves from the couch, every electronic in the household is ripped from the walls. Because of this, I found that consoles are really good for local multiplayer, and there's just one particular Steam game that I'd love to see come to the Switch. Stick Fight the game is a really good physics-based competitive multiplayer game, and it's just chaotic. If you've played Duck Game, the idea here is similar. 4 players spawn into a level littered with hazards and guns and stuff and just go wild. Last stick man alive wins. Everything about this game just screams good time with local multiplayer, and the simple controls would be pretty easy to translate into Joy-Cons. The devs have sported interest in porting to consoles in the future, so for now we'll keep our fingies crossed and hope that Papa Nintendo lets them aboard. A wise man once said that world domination is deep-rooted within the human mind. I'm not sure which one said it, but a lot of people try and take over the world, so I'm sure somebody said it before. Because of this, board games like Risk or even Monopoly have persevered throughout the years. There's not a better feeling than achieving absolute power and using it to ruin the lives of those who decided to spend time with you. It was inevitable that these sort of experiences would eventually translate into games. The most noteworthy one being, of course, Sid Meier's Civilization series. The Civilization series has been around since like forever, I don't know. And in terms of genre, it's pretty uncontested. Playing these games is a commitment. Like, you have to sit down with your friends and be like, well, this is where we'll be for the next 72 hours. Be sure to call out of work. My friends and I in the past have tried to set up LAN parties for Civ, but it's either a huge burden to get all of our PCs together, and once we finally do, everybody is too distracted from the 45-minute setup to actually play. This makes the Switch a fantastic candidate for the series. Everyone can just hop over to a friend's house, play for a while with literally no setup required, and then save and return back for another day. We've seen successful console ports in the form of Civ Rev in the past, so I'm certain a simplified version of the game could be successful on the Switch. I think a running theme with this list so far is that a lot of these games are either pick up and play or generally long experiences. For this next entry, we're going to focus on the latter. Long games have prospered well on the DS and 3DS in the past because, unlike your younger self, you simply don't have as much time to play video games anymore. That makes these sort of games with plenty of content provide the lengthy, easy to return to kind of game that perform really well on the handheld. Most of these games come in the form of either simulation games or JRPGs, so why don't we just cram both of these into one game? If you visited my channel in the past, you'd know that I regularly blend a copy of Persona 5 and insert it to my bloodstream, so this probably won't come as a huge surprise. Persona is a great series when it comes to balancing your friendship/dating sim aspects with classic RPG dungeon crawling. If you're a fan of both these type of games, the Persona series is the game for you. I've played through like all 120 hours of Persona 5 already, but if I had the option to take it piece by piece on the go, I would definitely be more inclined to go through it one more time. Okay, maybe a few more times. Plus, Atlas is being pretty buddy-buddy with Nintendo, so maybe this isn't as far-fetched as you'd think. This is probably another one of those entries that you'll hear and be like, Blue, that's stupid. But first of all, please don't speak to me like that in the comments, I assure you I will cry. And second, hear me out. If there's anything that the Switch has proven us so far is that Nintendo players are eager to get their hands on a range of different genres and generally aren't too stuck in just one type of game. The overwhelming success of Splatoon 2 manages to be a pretty solid example of this. What better type of game for pick up and play than a multiplayer shooter? The whole success of this genre is that these games are extremely easy for anyone to start playing and either do one quick round or like 100 in a row. With a charming cartoony aesthetic and solid team-based multiplayer, I think Overwatch would make a great entry in the Switch lineup. Overwatch's visuals make it the type of game that a younger player could point out at their local Blockbuster video store and won't be punted through the skylight by their father. And Overwatch is really well optimized, so I imagine it running pretty well in the system, albeit at a lower graphical setting. I've put tons of hours into Overwatch in my time, and I think being able to play it wherever you like on a little handheld system would be really unique. And to my surprise, the Overwatch team has actually expressed interest in potentially porting their game to the Switch sometime in the future. I can't imagine it being anytime soon, but being one of the most popular multiplayer shooters out there, I think it would sell like crazy. Why is it so hard to port old games to new systems? I feel like when a game company hears 1,000 voices cheer out, please let us play this game exactly the way it is now, just on this system, the game company somehow translates this into butcher the visuals and make everything play like trash. Remember that one time that Square Enix remastered the Final Fantasy VI for mobile and the character models were just transformed from charming pixel art to bad DeviantArt commissions? I mean, how could you possibly forget something like that? Luckily, their most recent port didn't do that, but still, I don't know what it is with Square Enix's handling of this IP, but man, are they really struggling to ever do it any justice. So you know what? Literally don't change anything and just slap Chrono Trigger DS onto the Switch. I don't care about anything else, just give us that. Let Chrono Trigger DS play on the Switch and don't give us this weird broken mobile port like you did to the poor folks on Steam. Like, damn man, you're literally sitting on a gold mine and people are just asking for the product and they don't even want you to work on it. They just want the thing you made like 1 billion years ago. Just give it to them. We'll probably just get the port of Chrono Trigger Mobile onto the Switch though. Oh well. And that's my list of games that I think should come onto Nintendo Switch. Let me know in the comments what games you want to come to Nintendo Switch, and thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe. I need attention.